Good morning. I'd like to open the meeting of the Metro North and the Long Island Railroad Committees for the month of February. Our first public speaker is Orrin Getz.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm speaking here as a member of the New Jersey Association of Rail Passengers. At the New Jersey Transit Board meeting on February 10th, the New Jersey Transit Resilience Program was definitely on the agenda. And one of the items was the New Jersey Transit Grid. And this is a microgrid to provide reliable power to keep their trains running and the light rail system running so that service will be provided in and out of Penn Station and other places in New Jersey Transit, and without the reliance on commercial power should the commercial power fail. And this is really a great thing. What they're doing right now is hiring a consultant to do the preliminary design of the power plant that will be required for this system. And I did give you a handout, Chairman Powley, and I appreciate you looking into this, because this, I think, is a good system that could be implemented here on the MTA so that passengers can get home from Penn Station on the Long Island Railroad or get home from to Westchester and Putnam at a Grand Central should the commercial power fail. And I was in Grand Central in 2003 when there was havoc trying to get people home during that commercial power failure. It has happened. It happens more often than we want, and having a backup system, I think, is excellent. I'd also appreciate if copies could be provided about this transit grid to other board members, including Commissioner Metzger and Commissioner Wartendijk, because it is a very good idea, and I think the MTA could look into implementing it. Another item that was approved at the New Jersey Transit Board meeting was the approval to hire a consultant to provide the environmental documentation to move ahead with the environmental analysis that's required for the new Hudson River tunnels. And that's a key step in moving that project ahead. And I know I'm really preaching to the choir when I mention it to a lot of members here on the board, but this is a critical project that is desperately needed. And we need the MTA really to become on board on this and be an equal partner with both New Jersey Transit and with Amtrak to move this project ahead with top speed. I know there's tremendous pressure from the governors of both the state of New York and New Jersey on this project, and we really need the full cooperation of the MTA as an equal partner to move ahead with this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaker is Aditi Payar.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Megan. I'm here supporting people who receive services through AHRC NYC. We've got Chad, Etsy, and Liza, and they're just here to talk to you guys today to ask you to keep in mind accessibility whenever you guys are meeting to talk about transportation. So I'm going to give this over to Chad.
Hi, everybody. I'm talking about elevator accessibility for people who need help for wheelchairs and elevators to work every single day. If we need it every single day and morning to get through each day, I want you guys to figure out how you get accessibility for elevators and wheelchair accessible for rents. When you guys start doing that kind of stuff? Because I need that.
Thank you. Approval of minutes. I'm going to go to Kathy.
Hi. There's a correction in this month's minutes that I'd like to call to your attention. On page 8 of the minutes, there was an error in calculating customer complaints. While the numbers still reflect a downward trend, the correct percentages are as follows. Complaints declined by 5% in November, 20% in December, and we're down 65% system-wide in 2015. That's the only correction that we have in the minutes.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Any opposed?
I think Neil has a question. I think Neil has a question.
I am generally not bothered by my name, my first name being misspelled. My mother was just
my.
different in the 70s, so, but I do mind when my last name is spelled differently.
Oh,
And this may be
heavens.
for the Long Island Railroad. I think we're doing the minutes together. So my name is Zuckerman, not Ackerman.
Oh, heavens.
My best friend in business school is Charlie Ackerman. Sometimes our friends confuse us, but this body should not know about Charlie Ackerman. So Neil, N-E-A-L, Zuckerman. Thank you.
Okay. Any opposed? Carried. Okay, work plans. Kath,
Metro North, there's no changes to the Metro North work plan.
okay. Pat?
There's no changes to the work plan.
Okay. Okay, Kathy, Metro North report.
Metro North report. During the past few years, the Federal Transportation Security Administration has been recognizing transportation agencies that have implemented outstanding security programs. TSA has commended these agencies by earning their highest rating of a gold standard through its Baseline Assessment for Security Enhancement, or BASE program. The BASE program is a voluntary security assessment of national mass transit and passenger rail systems and is performed by TSA's Transportation Security Inspectors. This assessment informs development of risk mitigation priorities and determines allocation of resources. TSA recognizes agencies that have strong security programs by giving their gold standard award. I'm pleased to report that at an upcoming board meeting, TSA will be here to honor both Metro North and New York City Transit for achieving the gold standard for 2015. Service reliability during the month of January was above our goal at 94.2%. Our goal is 93%. 142 trains, or 0.8%, were delayed greater than 15 minutes, 44 of which were delayed because of the storm on January 23rd to the 24th. Peak, off-peak, and weekend service continued to operate reliably during the month of January. In comparison to January of 2015, total delay minutes were reduced by 15%. West of Hudson operated at 96.2% for the month of January. I want to talk a little bit about our mechanical performance for 2015. Last year, Metro North achieved the best mechanical performance in the history of our rail cars, which means that customers are experiencing more reliable trains and improved on-time performance. In 2015, Metro North equipment averaged a distance of 199,838, so almost 200,000 miles before breaking down and causing a delay. It's the highest mean distance between failures performance since Metro North first started tracking this metric in 1989, and it was 8% above our projected goal for the year. The reasons for our improving reliability are the use of enhanced car maintenance strategies and the improved performance of a renewed rail fleet. Joint investments made through the MTA Capital Program and CDOT have brought us the M8s on our busiest line, the New Haven line. The M8s have replaced nearly all of the older M2s, M4s, and M6s, which dated back to the 1970s and 1980s. With all 405 M8s in service, the rail cars exceeded their mileage goal in 2015 by 2.4%. Now that the M8 cars have gone through their initial break-in phase, we have a chance to evaluate their design and performance in real-life conditions, and we're very pleased that the M8 cars are exceeding expectations. It's a testament to the years of work that went into designing and building these cars. And more importantly, it's a testament to the strong partnership between MTA and the Connecticut Department of Transportation that led to this crucial capital investment. We've implemented a reliability-centered maintenance strategy as highlighted in our annual fleet maintenance report, which is in your agenda today. The strategy has maintained exceptional service on the cars used on the Hudson and Harlem lines as well. Between 2004 and 2007, those fleets were replaced by the M7s. Although it's been more than 10 years, the M7s are operating very reliably as though they were brand new. Reliability-centered maintenance has effectively maximized the fleet's availability. And the good performance numbers have led to better numbers elsewhere in Metro North. They've contributed to a system-wide on-time performance of 93.5%, up 2 percentage points from 91.5% in 2014. These substantive enhancements and improvements to our service come at a time when ridership numbers are at their highest in Metro North history, more than 86 million riders in 2015. We've also seen customer complaints decline this month in January by 20% as compared to January of 2015. Finally, just wanted to advise the committee that we continue to monitor developments between New Jersey Transit Management and the railroad unions and are in ongoing communications with New Jersey Transit officials with respect to a potential rail strike beginning in mid-March. Any strike action, if it happens, is still several weeks away. If contingency plans are needed, we will work with our regional transportation partners and will communicate service options once they are finalized. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Okay. Safety?
Good morning. The safety report can be found on pages 33 through 35. In December, Metro North had 19 FRA reportable employee injuries. We concluded the year with a 1.7 increase from the previous year. In addition, we had 9 reportable customer injuries in December. Our first quarter safety stand-down will take place on March 2nd. It will focus on powered industrial truck safety, proper use of electronic devices, and reporting of safety concerns. This concludes the safety report. I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah.
So I refer to page 34. 2015, unfortunately, in the top box, demonstrates the worst year in the last 5 years in terms of number of employee injuries. We obviously spent a lot of time as a group talking about what we're doing to mitigate, but I'd love to have your thoughts about what was the cause, if anything in particular, of this being the worst of the last 5 years, and what we've learned from it and what we're doing in 16 to counteract what is a unfortunate trend in the wrong direction.
So the increase in employee injuries was due in large part to slips, trips, and falls. So what we're working with right now is we're having our safety managers out in the field doing site assessments of all the facilities, track, platforms, everything like that, to identify any areas where we can improve, and we're just going to start tracking it that way and try to help get this on the decline.
So just as a note then, if that's what your clear outcome was of 15, and you have a safety stand-down coming up, which is focusing on something different, I would urge you to think about how to leverage your methods of communication to actually focus. And it will be music to my ears to know that part of the safety stand-down was actually used to discuss this very issue, so we can help retard the numbers.
Okay.
Any other questions? Pat?
Good morning. As you're aware, I was unable to attend our last meeting dealing with the aftermath of Winter Storm Jonas, as it was named. Jonas was a 30-inch snowstorm that hit Long Island particularly hard. And when I say that, a lot of times you get variable amounts throughout the territory. For this storm, however, we pretty much had 30 inches everywhere. Far East End, we did a little bit better. They were in the mid-20s, but unfortunately, much of our territory was covered with 30 inches of snow. That resulted in a shutdown of service on Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock. Unfortunately, in that shutdown, we did strand a number of trains throughout the system. First, I'd like to apologize to the people that were on those trains and were impacted negatively for that, but it was a situation that gets very difficult, trying to predict when the snow is going to get too bad to be able to continue to run trains. And when trains become stranded, the thing that causes the stranding of trains is the loss of contact between the third rail and the third rail shoe on the rail cars. You wind up with the buildup of snow and ice on top of the third rail, and you're unable to make contact, and therefore you lose power. So that's the source of it. And obviously that occurs as the depth of the snowstorm increases. As trains run down the tracks, one, they tend to compact the snow a little bit because they almost act a little bit like a plow. But running trains is key to trying to keep the lines open. In addition to running trains, we also run between trains what we call pilot trains. And those trains are out there trying to keep the third rail clean by doing two things. One, spraying a de-icing agent on the third rail to try and keep the ice from adhering to the rail, to melt it, and also with scraper shoes, so that if there is a buildup of ice, they can actually scrape off the snow from the third rail. There's another thing we do when we're running trains to try and monitor the situation. As the M7 cars were delivered, one of the advantages those cars have is we can actually get current readings on board the trains of the amount of current that we're able to draw through the third rail. So all during the storm, we stay in radio contact with our trains and try to monitor and direct the pilot trains that I talked about to the areas most needing the treatment of the de-icing agent and or the scraper shoes. So that's an ongoing effort. We do that all day long, directing, there's known trouble spots where we're prone to drifting and that type of stuff, but there are many areas where we need to stay on top of it. We do that all day long, constantly trying to stay on top of that. So that's a little bit how we're trying to fight this storm as it goes on. When we see those numbers dip too low, that's when it becomes necessary to shut service down. A couple things I want to talk about. One is it was an extraordinary effort by our workforce to combat this storm. It was a very, very difficult storm. We were obviously at it for several days before we got back to normal service, and many workers worked around the clock during that time period, and I want to thank the workforce for the efforts that they put in. They were truly Herculean in what they did for us. We were able to get back in very quick time, considering the significant snowfall that we were faced with. One of the things you always do after any kind of serious event, and this certainly falls in that category, is you conduct after-action meetings. And in after-action meetings, you bring all your team together and sort of talk a little bit about what went right, what went wrong, and what can we do better. And we have held after-action meetings after this meeting, very much focused on what can we do better when we encounter these types of situations. And we have come up with a number of things. Some of them will involve capital purchases in terms of what types of equipment helped us to recover. Do we need more of that type of equipment? And how do we utilize that equipment? I'll give you, for example, one of the things that we had to deploy during the snowstorm is the snow built up and got compacted. One, we had to go out there and break it up, and we ran the track equivalent, I'll call it, of a snowplow up and down the line to break up the compacted snow. But two, you need to plow it away from the third rail, and you need to blow the third rail clean. And we do that with jets, literally jet engines that were mounted to track equipment, and we run up and down the line. Now, we have over 350 miles of third rail territory out there. So in a snowstorm, third rail is particularly vulnerable to these problems. To give you, for example, we went through 35,000 gallons of fuel to run these jets and these track equipment up and down the line during the snowstorm. We have 2 fuel trucks to be able to do that. Fuel trucks is one of the things we're looking at as something we need to increase our allotment of because refueling these things takes a period of time. Obviously, you need to get the fuel to where the jet is on the system. Access is not always the easiest thing to do, and it results in downtime. So we need to do better in that regard. We're looking very closely at the what I call the track version of a snowplow. We call it snow fighting equipment as well, because that was very helpful to us in our recovery, and more of them would be better. The problem with all this equipment is you can't use this when you're running trains. So it's not like you can do this in the middle of the storm. You can't put this equipment out there when at the same time you're running passenger trains. It's stuff that you need to do after you've come to a shutdown. So, hopefully we don't ever get to a shutdown, but we very much need to have the capacity that if we do get there, that we've got the ability to restore service as quickly as possible. The other thing I'll mention there is the following that snowstorm, we were actually having a very good December or January rather, in terms of on-time performance. And the snowstorm obviously threw us in the wrong direction. But we followed that, unfortunately, with a series of events from the snow period onward until as recently as the 16th of February, where we had a number of service interruptions that were significant, delayed large number of trains, and 3 of them were in the evening rush hour out of Penn Station. One was on February 2nd, another one was on February 4th, and another one was on February 16th. And they were significant impacts. The one on the 16th was the Friday night before a holiday weekend, President's Day weekend, so obviously you get a lot of people trying to get out of town for a long weekend. Those events were things we need to do better at, and they were caused not by the same issue, and that's what I want to try to reassure people. None of the causes were similar. One was a problem with train doors, a mechanical problem on our train. It could have been handled better in terms of how we dealt with it, but when you got a fully loaded train, you got passengers on board, and the crew tries to close the doors and they don't close, that's a problem. And therefore, you've got to unload it, you've got to get the people off, you've got people upstairs waiting to come down for the next train due off of that platform, you got to take the train back into the yard. Obviously, you try to troubleshoot it first, you try to resolve it on the platform, it could have been dealt with better, but it wasn't. On the 4th, we had a problem in C interlocking. C interlocking is an Amtrak interlocking outside of Penn Station. Turned out that it was a bad cable. Cable failed, and they lost signal indication. Obviously, it gets very difficult to run trains when your signals are not working properly. And on the 16th, we had a situation where we had an airbag on a train rupture. Now, airbags are used for the suspension system on a train. That's what keeps the train level, keeps the ride smooth. It's, equivalent to a shock absorber type of thing. I'll be honest with you, I've heard of deflated airbags. I have never before encountered a ruptured airbag, but this airbag ruptured. The crew heard an explosion as they were leaving Penn Station. A lot of times in third rail territory, when you hear an explosion, you think there's a problem with arcing with the third rail. It's the natural reaction that people would have. We were able to get that train back rather quickly and unloaded and into West Side Yard. It wasn't until later that we figured out what the problem was, what the explosion was. Because you suspect it's third rail related, you need to send people into the tunnel tubes and make sure that whatever potentially would have caused that explosion is fixed before you send another train in there. So there was extensive delays to investigate what was the problem, figure it out, resolve it, and obviously we had significant delays. So we've gone through a bad stretch here lately, and we're all very focused and want to get ourselves back on track. I did want to mention a couple other things just briefly. One, there's been a lot in the news lately about a project that the Governor Cuomo backed, and that's the building of a third-line main track between Floral Park and Hicksville on the Long Island Railroad main line. It is a project that has long been advocated by the Long Island Railroad. It is something that is drastically needed to be able to improve service on the railroad, and we feel very fortunate and thankful to have the governor support that project. And we have endeavored to work very closely with the governor's team to do an outreach session with all the communities that would be affected by the construction of the third track through that area. One of the things that needs to be done is an environmental study in order to proceed with a project like that. We have moved forward with any environmental hiring of an environmental consultant to perform that study. We expect to have them on board by next week. So it was a fast-track procurement to get them on board, and we are moving the project as quickly as we can to try and get through that. Now, that will very much involve continued outreach to the affected communities, because the environmental factors that we're talking about are things that affect the quality of life in those communities. And whether it be construction impacts, right now they have significant impacts with grade crossing gates being down at rush hour 24 minutes out of every hour. So there are existing terrible impacts in those communities, and if we add a third track, they would only get worse. So we very much need to do that analysis, explore the possibility of grade crossing elimination for those crossings, but it's a project that means a lot to improve the service on Long Island Railroad, and it's one we, again, are very thankful to have the governor's support for. I'll also mention another project that was, well, I'll skip that one for right now. Let me go to ridership. I wasn't here last month, and I know it was announced that our ridership was a 66-year record in 2015. So it is a mark we're very proud of. And we followed that up with an extremely good month in January, far exceeding last January. Now, last January wasn't the best because we had a tough winter last winter as well, but we far exceeded last year's ridership. And like Metro North, we also had an extremely good MDBF, mean distance between failure, for our fleet. We set a new record for the Long Island Railroad for MDBF. I think it's 12 years in a row now we have increased the MDBF. Obviously, the new fleets are part of that, but our M7 cars are now approaching 10 years of age, and they're not new anymore. So we've done a good job with our programs, our inspection programs, our reliability-centered maintenance program to keep those cars in good operating condition. And I'll stop there.
Any questions?
Yeah, without revisiting the long history of denial that characterizes the mainline third track stuff, we've got to say you're glad you're finally making movement in that direction, and I recognize what a delicate subject it is with the people that control the communities in those areas. However, other than the statements of the governor, which we all applauded, and some of the stuff in the press, where's the evidence that something's actually being done on this? I heard you, what you articulated there about, you're making these public outreach things, but where's the money coming from? Where's it show up in the budget? Where are you pulling the money from this stuff? When do you plan on putting, it in the capital budget and other more concrete structures?
Yeah, the environmental study that I'm talking about was actually previously started back in 2005 timeframe. Unfortunately, that study was never completed and was actually stopped midstream. That funding for that environmental study continues to be in our capital program, actually from the 05 to 09 program. So we have the funding to move forward with this environmental study. You've approved the capital program that the MTA put forward. It is not in that program at this point in time. That said, with the governor's support, to me, it's important that we move very aggressively and expeditiously, since we do have the funding for the environmental study, to advance this project as far as we can, as quickly as we can. So that's the goal for right now.
On the snowstorm, we don't want to belabor the point of stranding passengers. That's something we could discuss another time. Of the standards, I mean, there were standards set in place which are supposed to prevent that from happening. As we shut down the railroad in time to do it, there may be something about the storm, I suppose, that misled us, and we didn't shut down the railroad soon enough, or we weren't able to notify passengers. I mean, I think we need to see a review of that. One thing you didn't mention is communications with the passengers, and that's not just this snowstorm. It's an ongoing issue. It's been ongoing for years, and things have improved slightly, but especially of late, there's been alerts that are inaccurate. Sometimes it doesn't mean much, but many times it confuses the passengers. If anything, what ultimately it winds up doing is ruining the credibility of the railroad. I mean, that's really what people. It's one thing when we have problems and we're late, but it's another thing when people expect all this information, which 10, 15 years ago it wasn't possible, the technology to give it to them. Now we're giving them information, but it contradicts other information. Where the alerts contradict radio reports or something, and we're going to have to. I think we have to have someone look at this and come up with a better way of doing this, both for the passenger in terms of where they approach it, and also for our reputation.
Yeah, and we've had this discussion before, and there's nothing new. And as you know, our existing system for the platform information has its drawbacks, and we're looking to see what we can do to improve that. I don't expect miracles, because that's a short-term fix. I mean, long term, we need to get to centralized train control. We need to have the ability to know where all our trains are. If I don't know if you've ever been to our 204 office, but it's like going into the dark ages. That said, there are certain challenges there. Sometimes we can't meet people's expectations, and I'll use this example of the blown airbag as an example. Okay, when something like that happens, most of our people that are either in Penn Station or trying to get into Penn Station, because the crowds were actually metered into Penn Station to control passenger safety, there needs to be an investigation that goes on. We didn't know what caused this incident, and there's a certain period of time that you go through an investigation, and the information is agonizingly slow during that time you're doing the investigation until you can confirm what happens and restore operations. And those types of situations get very difficult to communicate. What are you going to say, and how are you going to say it? So, I mean, there's, we need to do things that we can do to get us better. There are still going to be times when we don't know what happened and we need to investigate.
Excuse me, not to belabor the point, but I can't help but believe that other people are probably doing this a little bit better than we do. I don't see this as our chairman would say, core competency. And maybe we need to take a look at if there's someone else who can help us. I mean, I don't. It's not just the Long Island Railroad. I know that New York City Transit, to be honest, has the same type of problem. I mean, it's like an ongoing, joke in the city about the alerts that you get an alert. And for New York City Transit, and I could take it up there, but the same thing happens with the railroad to some extent, even lesser actually. You get an alert. Oh well, then the problem's probably cleared up by now. And on Long Island Railroad, it's a different type of thing. Well, I get an alert. What is this? Well, I got an alert, after the fact, in other words, it says this train, the 325, whatever, the 722 is canceled. Meanwhile, it's 8:30. That kind of thing does happen. That's a mistake, but it does happen. I just wonder what we could do to maybe have someone take a look at how we do our information. I know there's problems at Jamaica at our command center, but it would be good if we could try to get a better handle on this.
I mentioned the incident with the train doors. That was a night we didn't do very well. But I can tell you, I was in Penn Station when the event occurred with the signal cable failure. And there were nonstop announcements the entire time of that thing. So, we have and are addressing it. Sometimes the accuracy of the information, I hate to keep coming back to this, but there are times that information changes. What you hear the first time is not what actually happened. And the incident with the exploding airbag, there were actually 3 different events that happened that same night. PSCC had to be spinning. New Jersey Transit had a broken rail, or Amtrak had a broken rail in the North River tunnel tubes at the same time, so their service was messed up. And we had another train, a DMU train, that pulled into the station and lost power. So the natural reaction was to link the loss of power for the DMU train with the explosion that was heard. So it can be very difficult. We don't always know what's happening exactly when it happens.
But that's not the issue. I understand that, and I think passengers understand. Well, maybe they don't, but anyway, I understand it, and I think if we let passengers know, they'll understand. But there are, well, I'll give an example. The snowstorm. After the snowstorm, people were first told that service was going to be, I believe it was 5 a.m.
5 a.m.
Then they were told, well, we can't do that now. It's going to be 7 a.m. That was a broad announcement. Then people got upset because they found out trains were actually running at 6. So there was, and the situation kept changing, I suppose, but it made people very, very, I guess there was no explanation after that saying that we were able to do this, and that it creates a credibility issue. And it's been in the newspapers. I know it goes around my commuter council. So I'd say it's something we have to address. I don't know, I think maybe we do it in a broader context of our communications with the passengers. And as I say, it's not just the Long Island Railroad. I don't know about Metro North, but I know it's with New York City Transit as well. And I don't think we're fully aware, the board or even the whole MTA, what the passengers really think about us and about that. And I do think there's a way we could address it and also provide better information. But I think they have to know that things happen on the railroad. That doesn't mean that, and we don't want to sound like we don't know what we're doing or that we're out of control, but that when something happens, we don't exactly know what it is, and that's something we have to communicate to the passenger better. That's all. And I don't know if we really know if there's other people out there doing it better, and if there's a better way. And that's all
Obviously,
I can't tell you. I think as I can't say, well, you should be doing this or you should be doing X or Y. I can't, but I that's all.
Understood.
Is it possible just to announce the train will be delayed and leave it at that without pinpointing it, to just give the basic information while you're figuring out what it's causing?
Yeah, and again, I'll use the blown airbag because it was a real bad Friday night, and the message that we put out there right away, Friday night when that happened, was one, that all westbound service, that service headed towards Penn Station, would be terminated at Jamaica. At Jamaica, we could put people on the subway and get people into the city on the subway. The reason we had to do that is when this event happened, we started backing trains up at Woodside. There had to be a dozen trains or more stacked up at Woodside trying to get into Penn Station. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to restore service on the one tunnel tube. We only really operate full-time on 2 tunnel tubes coming into and out of Penn Station. One coming in with trains going west, and then obviously the rush hour going east. We do use a couple other tubes for a few trains, but the majority of our service full-time is on those two tubes. So when we stopped the trains at Woodside, we were able to run trains east out of the one tube we had left. But in order to do that, we had to cut down service. In order to reduce service, what we put out were announcements that we would only run 4 lines out of Penn Station, and we directed everybody else, if you weren't on one of those 4 lines, to make your way to Brooklyn and Barclay Center, and we would run those lines out of Barclay Center in Brooklyn. So that announcement, I believe, was put out very clearly. We messaged that very clearly while this investigation was going on.
Any other questions? Okay, Long Island Safety.
Good morning. We're reporting on our safety performance through the end of December, and that can be found starting on page 257 in your book. Our total employee injuries were down almost 5%. For the year. Our FRA reportable injuries were down over 10.5%. The FRA reportable injuries are those injuries that require more than first aid or where an employee loses time. And in the specific category of lost time, our injuries were down 4%. In the customer injury category, we saw a decrease of 12.5% over in 2015 over 2014. Most notable, we had a 24% decrease in slip, trips, and falls from 2014 to 2015. Our TRACS program, which is our partnership community education and outreach program with the MTA Police, reached over 109,000 young people and adults. I'd be happy to take whatever questions you may have.
Any questions?
I would only indicate I am not surprised at the increase in intoxicated passengers. Something I have been concerned about for many, many years. I know we have recently expanded our no alcohol policy to weekends. It may be time we expand our no alcohol policy to all the time. It is something that is still, in my opinion, much too prevalent. It has an impact on our service, and nobody has to drink alcohol, especially since, as I've said, most of our people, when they get to the station, get in a car to get home. It's different than the subway, where most of our people are walking. When you're getting to a railroad station, whether it's Long Island or Metro North, almost everybody gets in a car. And the combination of alcohol on the train and getting in a car is not a good combination. We'll leave that for another discussion point, but I didn't want to leave the number alone without commenting on it.
Any more questions? Mike.
Good morning. I would like to start by actually making a short statement regarding an incident that occurred on the morning of Monday, February 15, when a pipe coupling connecting 2 sections of a 4-inch steel water line failed, flooding a section of Medicine Yards and the transformer house used to provide power to the lower level of Grand Central Terminal. The pipe was in current use by one of our East Side contractors to support a concrete drop site operation at 47th Street. The contractor was not working at the time due to the fact that it was a holiday. The water damaged a transformer and caused Metro North to lose partial electrical power to Grand Central, including the lower level and some connecting passageways on the upper level, which were closed. Fortunately, the power used to move trains via the third rail was not affected, and trains continued to use Grand Central's upper level, with no trains delays and cancellation due to the outage. Thankfully, no personnel was injured as well. Currently, we are still investigating the root cause of the coupling failure, and we'd like to mention that the use of this type of coupling is an industry standard. Immediately after the incident, a stop work order was issued to the contractor responsible for the area. The stop work order has since been lifted. The contractor has removed a section of pipe at the incident location and will establish a new water source at the surface for the concrete drop operation. Inspection of water lines adjacent to critical Metro North infrastructure is presently underway by Metro North personnel together with our personnel. East Side Access construction operation in the northern portion of Medicine Yards are on hold until power and lighting is restored, which is expected to occur this week. I would like to commend Metro North and East Side Access personnel on their rapid joint response to the incident and extend my sincere gratitude to MTA Police Department for their support during the incident. With that, I will conclude this statement. Regarding MTA, the East Side Access construction, I'd like to mention that the Manhattan South Structure, the CM005 Michaels Corporation, is expected to, substantial completion is expected to be this March, and contractor is completing its concrete work. Regarding the 006 Manhattan North Structure, works continues, and including repairs work in the 60th Street tunnels that have been going along for quite some time. The work in Harold, the CH053 substantial completion is expected to be reached again this March. And regarding the Harold structure, the east approach for the bypass, for the westbound bypass drilling has been completed, and we expect to start the excavation of the tunnel launch pit area this week, actually. The assistance package that we are actually working on continues to the installation of the various electrical conduits, and work is proceeding. That concludes my report for East Side Access.
Any questions? Chief.
Good morning. For January, we had an increase of 4 incidents, 25 compared to 21. This is both Long Island Railroad and Metro North combined. 3 robberies compared to 1. One of those robberies was in Babylon. We had an arrest on the scene on an incident. One robbery was in Fordham. Individual and the victim knew each other. The individual is identified, and he is wanted at this time. And one at Yankee Stadium, a robbery which is now open. We do have video surveillance at both Fordham and Yankee Stadium, at those which helped us and is helping us with these cases at this time. We're continuing the grade crossing enforcement. We had 134 summonses issued in January at grade crossings. We did continue our homeless initiative as well. To date, the initiative, we've, along with our partners at the BRC, we've afforded shelter to 225 individuals, and that initiative is continuing. We have issued 9 panhandling summonses in the month of January. And as mentioned earlier, the New Jersey transit strike, we're continuing to monitor that situation as well. If there's any question.
Chuck.
The chief's report underscores something I heard from Pat a moment ago concerning grade crossings. I wonder if at some point in the not-too-distant future we could have a session to focus on 2 things. One, I know there's an enormity of them, but what is it that is necessary there? And number 2, what are the alternatives, if any? So that there can be a focus on what happens where you have to replace grade crossings. What happens? If we could focus on that at some future date, that would be helpful, to me at least.
Okay. Any other questions for the chief?
Thank you.
Okay. Mike, I think you have an action item. I think you have an action item.
Yes, yes, we do. David?
Good morning. Capital Construction has one action item for consideration and approval this month. The item is located on page 49 of your committee book. The item is requesting approval by the board to allow MTACC to enter into an agreement with the owners of a building located at 415 Madison Avenue for the relocation of utilities and equipment that is within an area of the owner's property. This will allow for the construction of an entrance to the East Side Access Grand Central Terminal Concourse at 48th Street. Under this agreement, the owner will utilize its own contractors to perform the utility relocation work, and MTACC reimburse the owner for the work up to a not-to-exceed amount of $14.8 million. The item is hereby submitted for your consideration and vote.
Okay, any questions? I need a motion to approve.
So move.
Okay, second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, carried. Kath?
David, second one, 2.5 million. Okay, it's a procurement. Well, I thought it's a procurement. I'm sorry.
Kath, here.
There we go. We have an additional action item that was distributed last week and is also a handout that you should have in front of you. It's the agreement between Metro North and the City of Newburgh with respect to the lease of parking and dock facilities in support of the Newburgh Beacon Ferry. The lease will be in effect through January 31st of 2017, during which time the City of Metro North will continue to speak to try to identify alternative locations for the parking and dock facilities, as well as other sources of funding.
Any questions?
So, Kathy, if I'm hearing you correctly, this allows the current status quo to continue.
Yeah, through January next year.
While you, Metro North, and the city and the ferry try to find a long-term solution.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you've heard before that there's been some issues with the sale of the property and,
Right.
and a new owner, and, so this basically continues things through January of next year. We're going to, again, use CMAQ funding to pay for
Right.
the expenses through this year. We'll have to identify an additional source for January of next year, and then we're hopeful we'll be able to speak, with the new owner, with the City of Newburgh, to be able to identify a different location and also a different source of funding.
Okay.
Okay. Information items. We have a joint information item on the PTC.
This is for both railroads. There's a status update on PTC implementation is in the book, but it's going to be discussed in greater detail today at CPOC. If you have any questions now, we're happy to answer them, but the presentation actually will be made at CPOC this afternoon.
Yeah, on the PTC, I know the freight locomotives, for Long Island Railroad, the freight locomotives are listed in there as part of the program. That's on our dime. The freight railroad doesn't reimburse us for that work, do they? No, we're paying to install PTC on on all their locomotives because they're leased, or is that correct?
Actually, New York and Atlantic will reimburse us for the onboard equipment.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That was the only question I had. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to revert back to our action item on Metro North. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
So the current update on PTC is both railroads still believe that we're going to meet the congressional requirement.
Yes.
Okay. So we're still moving forward in that context. Good. Okay.
Okay, the next is information items.
Yeah, Metro North has a number of information items this month. The first is the adopted budget and financial plan for 2016. It's in the agenda book in accordance with the MTA's approved budget procedures, and it provides our final estimate for 2015, the 2016 adopted budget, and the financial plan for 16 through 19. We can address any questions that the committee might have on the financial plan. The others are the annual operating results for 2015, the annual fleet maintenance report for 2015, which I referred to earlier, and then also the diversity and EEO report for the fourth quarter of 2015. That latter report will be discussed in greater detail today at Diversity Committee.
Any questions? Long Island have any information?
Yeah, we have the same information items as Metro North. In other words, the financial plan for 2016 is in there. The 2015 annual operating results are in there. The fleet maintenance report for 2015 is in there. The EO diversity report, and again, there will be a meeting this afternoon for the diversity committee. The one additional item that we have in there is our 2015 spring schedule changes. They're associated with the beginning of our track work program in the month of March. So there are items in there affecting the Port Wash branch, our Atlantic branch in the area of Valley Stream, some bridge work at Jamaica, and Hicksville Station reconstruction. So,
Any questions? Ira?
Regarding the annual operating report and on-time performance, I can't help but note that the Long Island Railroad has had declining on-time performance for the past 3 years. We haven't been able to meet our on-time performance goals for many, particularly certain branches. We even see there's unprogrammed standees of, all I'd say is a significant amount, and it's disturbing to me because it's not like it's just a month or two or even just 1 year. It seems to be a bad trend, and you look at our, the railroad's doing an excellent job of maintaining the fleet, and the MDBF is up overall, and even on some historically problem areas in diesel, we're meeting on MDBF goals, but we're not able to, come to a standard we've set for on-time performance. And I know I've talked with you, I've talked with Dave about this, and I think that both of you are on the right track for this. Things you tell me is the kind of things I think about. But I just I want to hear your comments about where we're headed for the next year, and hopefully we'll be meeting our goals.
yeah. Somebody answer that. A couple things on on-time performance. If you remember last year, we took a look and we actually lowered the goal last year from 95 to 94. And we did that not only the overall number, but we did it on a branch-by-branch basis, considering what we thought were the operational frailties, if you want to call them that, of the individual line. In terms of all the things that affect MDBF, I'll start off with weather being the first one. We were doing very well in January, as I said, till Jonas. In February, we've had a number of issues. And you point up MDBF. Well, that ruptured airbag will be a single incident in terms of MDBF, but it delayed or canceled trains up near 100. So it's depending where and when something happens, points to the vulnerabilities of the system that we operate out there. We do operate at capacity so that when things go wrong out in the East End, it may not have a significant impact when I lose a signal out east, but when I lose a signal in Penn Station, it can have dramatic impacts. And we very much operate the system, particularly on the western end of it, at capacity. And there just is not the ability to recover from some of those impacts without meaning any MDBF numbers, okay? They're both one incident, but when an incident occurs in certain areas, it has a much greater impact on service than other areas. And I know I'm talking to the choir, but that's the reality of, you can't just look at one indication. You've got to look at the whole picture. You can't just look at MDBF. You got to look at the whole system.
What I meant, I gave it as an example of us, we're doing a good job in one area, and I even think we're doing probably a good job in track maintenance Is there something that it's maybe it's just signaling around I mean, anything around Penn Station can cause a cascading effect. We all know that. But we did better in the past. We're not doing as good now. Is it the weather? I mean, it's severe weather in the last 3 years. I don't know, but a declining trend is not a good thing.
I mean,
and we set those new goals we set, and I supported that. I was mentioning that even before you got here, that I think we should do different goals for each branch. We should have realistic goals to set. And it's been over a year, and we're not, making the passengers are clearly dissatisfied. I mean, you're as good as your last rush hour. I understand that, but I'm looking at something, going back a year or two, and that's why I'm bringing it up and hoping there's a plan where we could, whether it's signals or whether it's whatever it is, that's keeping the on-time performance at a level we don't even accept.
The MDBF number is one example of the things that you need to focus on that will impact positively the on-time performance. The condition of the track plant, the condition of the signal system, all those are things that we need to constantly stay focused on and particularly focus our efforts on if we have any areas that repeat. In other words, an airbag is something once. If it happens 3 times, I need to make sure the RCM program is focused on, fixing that problem. If the same signal fails 3 times, we need to find where the defective cable is, or maybe the defective cable we found wasn't the whole story. So you very much need to investigate individual incidents and deal with them in your maintenance program. So we very much try to do that. Weather's a tough one. You can't control when the storms hit, but you can do things to try and improve your performance, address your vulnerabilities. For example, last year we put heat tape out of Cold Spring Harbor on the 3rd rail. So the same thing this year. We're going to be putting some heat tape in some areas where we had trains stranded that we think are prone to problems. So you do need to learn from incidents. I talk about after action meetings. They are definitely part of the story. You can't ignore things and say it'll go away. It doesn't go away. You need to address it. You need to be proactive. But a lot of that stuff just takes time.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, we have procurements. Metro North has 6 procurement actions in the total amount of $4,593,000. There are no non-competitive procurements. There are 6 competitive procurements, 4 miscellaneous service contracts, transportation technology, web tech passenger transit, Sherwood Electromotion, and Welco Electric Company. The remaining 2 are contract modifications for Daniela Rental and TNT Equipment. There are no ratifications. I make a motion to recommend these procurements. I need a second.
Second.
Discussion. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Carried. Now, on Long Island, as I see it, we have 1 competitive request for proposal.
Good morning. Yes, the Long Island Railroad has 1 item in the competitive section, no items in the non-competitive nor in the ratification section. The competitive section item is a request for MTA Board approval to adopt a resolution declaring that competitive bidding is impractical or inappropriate and that it is in the public best interest to use the request for proposal process pursuant to Section 1265A of the Public Authorities Law to award a contract to design and furnish signal system components for the new 2nd track on the railroad's Ronkonkoma branch from Farmingdale to Ronkonkoma. Under the contract, the successful proposal will provide final design, fabrication, delivery, testing, and system integration of interlocking central instrument locations, master locations, transmitter locations, grade crossing huts, cases, and associated subsystems. The signal system will include 18 new grade crossing huts, new interlockings at Farmingdale, Wyandanch, Deer Park, Central Islip, and modifications at Ronkonkoma. Funding for Phase 1 is included in the Railroad's 2010-2014 capital program, and Phase 2 option funding is included in the Railroad's proposed 2015 to 2019 capital program. This item is submitted for your consideration and vote.
Any questions? Chuck?
Do we have any estimate of cost?
I'd have to go back and check on that.
Could you let me know?
Certainly.
Thank you.
So move.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Mike?
David. Capital construction procurement package this month consists of one item, which is located on page 197 of your committee books. The item is a competitive item requesting approval of a modification to the Eastside Access Grand Central Terminal Concourse and Facilities Fit-Out Contract to accommodate an entrance to the Eastside Access Concourse on 43rd Street. The amount for this modification is $2.55 million. The item is hereby submitted for your consideration and vote.
Any questions? We need a motion.
So move.
Second? Any questions?
Can I be recorded as abstaining, please?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Okay, the monthly reports from Metro North and the Long Island Railroad are in your book, and we'll open it up for questions. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
Any opposed? Carried. Next meeting will be March the 21st for both of us, one of us at 8:30 and one of us at 9:30.